instinctually intact men, young men, are not going to want to be initiated into culture by men who are not instinctually intact, which is why there's a lot lacking in modern day men's groups and men's circles, is that you have men who have not been initiated into manhood trying to initiate other men into manhood. And like I said at the beginning, young men who are instinctually intact, so their instincts are there, their instincts are online, they're not going to participate in that. And they're going to not want to be part of the social contracts or agreements that older men are trying to pass down. And what I mean by this in a very practical, real-world example is, if you've ever seen a group of men and there's a teenager who maybe hasn't started dating, you'll watch that often within that group, older men will start teasing him about, that he hasn't had a girlfriend yet. It'll usually sound a lot more crass than that. And if this young man, if his instincts are online, he'll know how to handle it. He'll have a clear statement about why he's not actually worried about not having a girlfriend yet. If his instincts are not fully online, if he's not fully connected to himself, he'll be swayed by that, and it will influence him most likely in a negative way. So men and women are constantly initiating each other into social contracts and codes of conduct, and that's men initiating men, women initiating women, and also men and women initiating each other, essentially into a way of being that says this is how we do life. So for older men with younger men, it's like, this is how we this is how we treat women, or this is how we feel about our own selves in terms of our relationship to women. This is how we feel about ourselves in terms of our sexual experience. And so there's a ton of self-worth placed around, especially for guys, how many partners they've had, how many women they've slept with, right? There's like a sort of, I would call it a cultural code or a social agreement that, like, in many circles is like seen as an accomplishment, or like you're not a real man if and this will often be shared verbally with other men, and that what happens is that in a group setting, other men can agree with it, can feed into it, or they can kind of be like, like, actually that's not really true for me. And we are constantly passing on, sometimes consciously, sometimes verbally, sometimes very intentionally, but most of it is unconsciously and subconsciously, that we're passing on social contracts and agreements about how we're here to do life, about what is normalized, and about what is expected of us. And you will see, again, like people who are really instinctually connected to their instincts, and people who are really sovereign within themselves, meaning they're not looking left and right. They're not actually coming from a place of needing to be accepted, or needing to belong or be validated within a group. And they are listening to their own their instincts, and most likely have a relationship with God, so their eyes are on God and not on people, not on like worldly things. They're not looking left and right, or comparing themselves to others, or comparing themselves to a social status that has been culturally created, that determines or defines their worth as a man or as a woman. And they're essentially not interested in being initiated into that. And this is a very interesting dynamic, because most men innately will have a level of respect for that. We're like, this guy, he's not he's not here to be convinced or swayed of anything. He's just his own person. And, you know, for some guys it will be like triggering, or they'll try harder to lay out their own social contracts or conditioning or codes of conduct. And it's the same with women. Women have a perfect example of this is, I remember a handful of years ago in the middle school in the small town that I was living in, the grade 7 girls, I believe, they had this bracelet system that was like different colors for different things that they'd done with guys, different colored bracelets. And it had nothing to do with love or attraction or anything. It was all about social status amongst the girls. And, you know, this is a very distorted example of, again, like being initiated into a consciousness. And it is a perfect example of what happens when you isolate human beings by age group. It's a terrible model, and ultimately creating a lot of turmoil, because those girls don't have any better role models except for the girl in grade 7 who, you know, initiates this and creates a whole social dynamic that's like, you can only be part of our club if you have these bracelets and do these things and do these dares, you know. And so that is like a perfect example of, you know, and that's something that obviously that the girl who initiates that has received that code of conduct or social contract, or that way of treating herself, her own body, treating other girls in terms of like, this is how we do girl friendship, and then also treating men or boys. So it's not, you know, it's not just men or women. It's always like a co-creation. But what you'll see, like I said at the beginning of this, is that when men or women of any age their instincts are online, they're connected to something that runs deeper than needing to be accepted by the tribe, for example, they'll disrupt that. They're like, I'm not really interested in belonging to this or being initiated into this. And this is something that I've seen where, you know, in this attempt to try to bring masculinity back online and this awareness around it, a lot of men, well-intended, have the desire to initiate young men, to create rites of passage and to create initiations. Perhaps they never had those themselves, but I really believe that it's not possible to create that if you haven't yourself been initiated. And initiation into manhood is critical. Like, it's so crucial for that to happen, for young men to have the opportunity to face death and to face challenge in a very specific and wholesome way that prepares them, that lets them know who they're made of, that lets them be ready for becoming a man, and not a one-time thing that happens, but an ongoing thing that happens that essentially is preparing them for life, so that they know that they are now ready to face the trials and tribulations that come with being a man. And the reason this happens in most tribal cultures at around age 13 or 14 is that that's the moment when that like little boy is ready to die and the man is ready to be born, take place of the little boy. And there's also an element biologically in that initiation where men at that age are really ready for it. And it's not always exactly the same age, but there's like an element of, okay, I'm ready now to see what I'm made of. And the importance of that being, well, it used to be that the other men in the tribe knew, like, okay, this young man is ready to join the hunting team and not be a liability to us, but be an asset. And without that kind of initiation happening, whatever that is. And I say initiation, and I cringe because, like I said, people will try to create these like kind of fake new age woke initiations that are very cringy. But without that, you have men going through life and they've never really fully separated themselves from their mom. They've never really fully separated themselves from their dad. The little boy hasn't died. And then there might be experiences in their life that happen later on where that gets to happen. It's a lot easier if it happens at the coming of age and not later in life. And the other thing I want to say on this quickly is that phase of, for men, like age 14 to about 25, maybe a bit older, but that age is very critical, the whole initiation, rites of passage, like the beginning of that, not only for the individual, but for society as a whole, because it's in that age that that is also like how evolution happens at an expedited rate. This is like a time in evolution where young men discover themselves, but also will bring back new wisdom and learnings, new healthy energy of vitality, strength, power, connection to God, connection to nature, connection to mortality. Bring that back to the evolution of the consciousness of the entire group of people. And so without that happening, which is basically most of Western society right now, there's a big piece of an important part of evolution is missing, which is contributing to a lot of different factors that are essentially like the demise of our society right now.